Why does one injustice become a movement while another becomes a sad story people share for 2 days and forget? It is not always because the first event is more painful. It is not always because the leader is more charismatic or the message more perfect. Often, change spreads through relationships people already trust and survives through habits they can repeat after the emotion fades. Hi, I'm Sarah, and this is Wise Mind Stories. In the power of habit, social movements grow through three forces: the strong ties of friendship, the weak ties that connect a wider community, and new social habits that give participants identity and ownership. In this episode, one family's private fear will become a public ritual, not because everyone knows them, but because the community learns what to do every Thursday at 7:10. Rosa Delgado's daughter was struck on a crossing 3 blocks from East River. The car was moving slowly. 15-year-old Sophia rolled across the hood, hit the pavement, and fractured her collarbone. She survived. The driver stayed. No one was charged. The police report called it a visibility problem. Everyone who worked the late shift called it inevitable. The crossing sat beneath an elevated rail line where concrete columns blocked the view. The signal gave pedestrians 19 seconds. Delivery trucks turned across the painted lines. 2 streetlights had been broken for months. Employees had filed complaints. Residents had signed online forms. A city office had promised a traffic review. Nothing changed. At the hospital, Rosa sat beside Sophia's bed and watched her daughter try to open a juice bottle with one hand. "I told you to wait for the signal," Rosa said. Sophia stared at her. It was the signal. Rosa looked away. Blaming the instruction was easier than accepting that following it had not protected her child. The following Thursday, Rosa returned to the crossing at 7:10 p.m., the time Sophia had been hit. She carried a flashlight and stood beside the painted line. Eli came with her, then Nia, then 3 warehouse employees from Rosa's shift. They did not have signs. They were not certain whether they were protesting, documenting, or simply refusing to let Rosa stand alone. For 19 seconds, they crossed together. The next week, 12 people came. One carried a handmade sign: 19 seconds is not safe. Another brought reflective tape. Mara arrived late and found them walking the crossing in silence, turning around and walking back when the signal changed. The action was small enough to repeat and visible enough to make passers-by ask what it meant. Social change often begins through strong ties. We act for people we know because affection turns an abstract problem into an obligation. Friendship creates trust, emotional energy, and the feeling that not showing up would be a personal absence. Rosa's first group came because they knew Rosa, but friendship alone could not fill a city council chamber. The movement spread through weak ties: the coworkers, neighbors, parents, customers, union members, faith groups, cycling clubs, and friends of friends who did not know Rosa well but belonged to networks where participation became expected. Nia posted the Thursday walk in a neighborhood group. A teacher recognized Sophia's name and shared it with parents. A delivery driver sent it to a road safety forum. Priya told a local data science association that Bright Cart's route logs documented 43 hard-braking events near the crossing. Most of these people were not close friends. That was their strength. Weak ties carry information beyond the circles where it began. They also create social pressure. When several people from different parts of your life expect to see you, participation begins to feel like a community norm rather than a favor to one person. What cause in your life remains trapped inside a circle of people who already agree? Which acquaintances connect that concern to another group? What repeated action could a newcomer understand without receiving a 40-minute explanation. And if the original leader became tired, would participants know what to do next? By the fifth Thursday, 70 people came. That created a new problem. The walk blocked traffic, drivers shouted. A city representative warned Rosa that an unpermitted demonstration could be dispersed. Some participants wanted confrontation. Others wanted a quiet memorial. A local activist proposed expanding the campaign to every dangerous crossing in Rivergate. Warehouse employees worried the larger agenda would delay the one repair they needed. Movements often weaken at the point they become visible. The original pain is clear, the growing group is not. Without new habits, each gathering requires the leader to recreate urgency, settle conflict, assign work, and explain identity. Emotion becomes the only fuel. Emotion is powerful. It is not renewable on command. Rosa almost ended the walks. After the fifth gathering, she sat in Mara's car and said, "This was supposed to help Sophia. Now strangers are arguing about what my daughter means." Mara asked, "What happened the first night?" "We crossed." What did everyone understand? That 19 seconds was not enough. They built the movement around that clarity. Every Thursday would follow the same ritual. At 7:10, participants gathered. One new person told a 90-second story about the crossing. The group walked for 19 seconds. Then participants divided into 3 actions. Document one hazard, contact one decision-maker, or invite one new network to the next walk. No speeches longer than 3 minutes. No one person controlled all 3 actions. The movement had a rhythm. The rhythm created ownership. It also created a way to survive disagreement. On the 7th week, a restaurant owner named Victor complained that the walk was blocking evening deliveries. Participants immediately treated him as an opponent. Rosa invited him to lead the documentation group instead. Victor showed them that trucks were not turning across the crossing because every driver was reckless. The legal loading zone ended half a block too early, forcing large vehicles to circle and approach from the dangerous side. The movement added an extension of the loading zone to its proposal. Victor did not join every walk. He did introduce the group to the Merchants Association, a network none of Rosa's close friends could reach. Weak ties do more than enlarge a crowd. They bring information that the original circle does not possess. A movement built only from strong friendship can become emotionally committed and intellectually narrow. Bridges expose the cause to different interests, vocabularies, and forms of power. That exposure creates friction. It can also make the solution more real. People no longer attended only for Rosa. They had a role they could repeat. This is how social habits sustain change. The movement gives participants routines that create a new sense of self. They are not merely sympathetic observers. They become documenters, callers, escorts, hosts, storytellers, and witnesses. The action begins to say, "This is what people like us do." By the 8th week, the campaign had a name: 19 seconds. The city installed temporary lighting. Rosa called it a beginning. The traffic office scheduled a formal review. The group kept walking. At the first city hearing, 36 people attended, and only 3 were allowed to speak. Participants left furious. Some wanted to abandon the ritual and confront officials outside their homes. Rosa felt the old helplessness returning. Sophia, still wearing her sling, asked a simple question. What do we do next Thursday? The answer existed. They gather. One person tells a story. They cross. They document, contact, and invite. The habit did not guarantee victory. It prevented one disappointing meeting from forcing the movement to invent itself again. Persistence is often described as a personality trait. In collective action, persistence is frequently a schedule, a role, and a next step people can perform while disappointed. Then a popular creator posted a video about the campaign. Attendance jumped to 400. News cameras arrived. A national road safety organization offered branding support. Success threatened the habit again. The large crowd could not cross safely. People came for footage rather than the work. A few treated Rosa as the movement's spokesperson on every transportation issue. The campaign had to adapt without losing its identity. They replaced the single crossing with 19-second light vigils at 7 nearby intersections. Local hosts used the same ritual and reported hazards to a shared map. The strong tie had become a distributed habit. Each host could adapt the final action to local needs, but the 19 seconds remained. That balance mattered. Too much control from the center would make participants assistants to Rosa. Too little shared structure would turn the campaign into 7 unrelated complaints. Identity needs a recognizable practice and room for ownership. People continue when they can say both, "I belong to this," and "part of this belongs to me." Rosa was no longer required at every gathering. The movement became self-propelling. 3 months after Sofia was hit, the city approved a protected pedestrian phase, new lighting, and a restriction on truck turns during shift changes. The vote was not unanimous. One council member argued that the city could not redesign every dangerous corner after one highly visible accident. Rosa answered without claiming the crossing was unique. The campaign had collected timing data, braking events, visibility photographs, and stories from people who used it daily. The ritual had produced evidence, not only attention. That is another way habits sustain movements. Repeated action creates a record. A crowd can be dismissed as emotion. A pattern documented week after week becomes harder to treat as an exception. At the final council meeting, officials praised the campaign's data, persistence, and civility. Rosa knew that description was incomplete. The movement had not begun as a model of public engagement. It began because 6 frightened people did not know what else to do at 7:10 on a Thursday. Its power came from turning that confusion into a habit other people could enter. To understand or build collective action, use 4 elements: friend, bridge, ritual, identity. Friend. Which strong relationship makes the first action emotionally real? Bridge. Which weak ties can carry the issue into groups that do not yet know the central person? Ritual. What simple, visible action can be repeated without the founder explaining it every time? Identity. What role allows participants to become owners of the change rather than an audience for the leader? Social pressure can support justice or conformity. Strong and weak ties can spread courage or cruelty. Habit makes collective action powerful. It does not make the cause correct. The moral work remains. But a cause that cannot become a practice often remains dependent on the emotion of one moment, of people who care. Public change endures when participation becomes something people know how to repeat. So if there is a cause you care about, do not ask only how to make people feel more strongly. Ask what action would let them belong tomorrow. If this story gave you a new way to see collective change, subscribe to Wise Mind Stories. But the power of habit leaves one final, uncomfortable question. If routines can operate before conscious choice, if companies can engineer cues, and if communities can make participation feel obligatory, how responsible are we for what we do? In the final episode, we will explore habit and free will, where explanation ends, where accountability begins, and why awareness creates a responsibility that shame alone cannot fulfill. Because understanding why you acted does not automatically excuse the action, but it may reveal where a different choice must be built. EP9. When a habit becomes an excuse. Brightcart's reward game begins consuming one customer's nights, and Mara must decide whether automatic behavior reduces responsibility or distributes it.